If there's one sure proof the times are getting more civilised than they used to be, 'tis the way business is carried on nowadays. Well, years ago, according to Grandpa Walcott, was something awful. And to prove his point, a thing which Grandpa's always ready and willing to do, he tells this story about how he got the pair of swailskin slippers that he's been wearing now for nigh on 30 year. Of course, he's had 3 new pair of soles and 2 new pair of uppers in 'em during that time, but they're the same pair of slippers. And he likes to treasure 'em because he says they remind him of the one and only time he ever got the better of old Josiah Bartle, who was the merchant here 30 year ago. And even then, he said, he'd never a got 'em only for a thing called algebra. And when I asked him what in the world algebra was, he said he didn't know, but it must be a wonderful fine thing sure enough, to help a poor man like him get the better of a shrewd old bird like Josiah Bartle. 'Twas long about the middle of April in 1931, says Grandpa, when Liz, his missus, that's Grandma, told him the molasses keg was empty, and he better go down to Josiah's store and get some. Grandpa wondered how he'd pay for it, 'cause 'twas too early in the spring to get credit on next summer's account, and he certainly didn't want to disturb the bit of gold he had in the sock. And 'twas then Liz reminded him of his 2 swailskins. True, one of 'em had some shot holes in 'em, but the other was perfect, and between 'em they ought to fetch enough lassie to tide him over till credit time. So taking his empty keg and the 2 swailskins, off he went. Now Skipper Josiah the merchant was glad to see him, business being what it was that time of the year, and told Grandpa how lassie was current price, $1 a gallon. Likewise swailskins was current price, $1 a skin. Grandpa asked him what about shot holes, and Josiah told him they was current price too, 10 cents off for every shot hole. Well, Grandpa didn't need any learning to figure he ought to get a gallon for the good skin and a part of a gallon for the shot-holey one. So when Josiah come back from the inside where he kept these swailskins and lassie and things like that, and said right friendly like, "Here you are, Ben, here's your keg with your half-gallon of lassie." Grandpa was took aback and said it ought to be more than a half a gallon. Well, Josiah rubbed his hands friendlier than ever and said no, half a gallon was exactly right. You see, he said, 2 swailskins at $1 each was $2. Then 15 shot holes in one of 'em at 10 cents a shot hole, that was $1.50. Take that off of the $2 and you had 50 cents left, and with lassie $1 a gallon, here was his half gallon. Now Grandpa knowed there was something wrong. He said there was no shot hole at all in one of 'em, and he asked Josiah to give him a gallon for that one, and give him back the holy one. But Josiah explained how he couldn't do that, 'cause the 2 skins went together in what was called in business a package deal, where the good points of the one had to offset the bad points of the other. Then Grandpa wanted to call the whole thing off and go home again with his 2 skins and his empty keg. But Josiah said no. Business was business, and what was done couldn't be undone. Oh my, the business world would never know where it stood. Then Grandpa made a remark, but Josiah threatened the law on him for it, so all that was left for him to do was to go home. Now when Liz, his missus, Grandma that is now, tipped up the keg that night to full the molassie dish, she noticed there wasn't much in it. So she wormed the story out of Grandpa and give him 24 hours to go back to Josiah and get his rights, or else she'd do it. Course, a thing like that would disgrace Grandpa completely, so he spent nearly all that night lying awake, thinking up a scheme. Next morning he had it, and he went over to Uncle Finn Pryor to get his help in carrying it out, and Uncle Finn was only too glad to do it. And so the upshot was, late that evening, Grandpa visited Josiah's store, and Finn Pryor, with 2 or 3 more, had just started an argument about the big profits merchants made. They asked Grandpa's opinion, and he went even further than the rest and said, yes, merchants often sold things for 10 times what they paid for 'em. Well, Josiah got mad, and he poked his snout right into the trap. He told Grandpa he'd be glad to sell anything he had for 10 times what he'd paid for it. All right then, said Grandpa, sell me back that swivel skin that got the 15 shot holes in it. Well, what a hullabaloo. Everybody wanted the particulars, and they all agreed Josiah hadn't paid nothing for it. So being as how 10 times nothing was nothing, Josiah was bound by his word of a man to give it back to Grandpa for nothing. Now, if Josiah had give in right then, he'd have been better off, but he couldn't bear to get the worst of it, so he said he wouldn't be guided by people with less book learning even than he had. And then who should come in but the schoolmaster? And they put the thing square up to him. And, says Grandpa, 'twas the schoolmaster that brought up this business about algebra. According to algebra, said the schoolmaster, Josiah hadn't just paid nothing for the swivel skin with the holes, he'd paid 50 cents less than nothing, because he took off 50 cents from the good one on account of it. Now, algebra called that a minus 50 cents, and 10 times that was a minus $5, which again, according to algebra, meant that Josiah had to give Grandpa back the skin and $5 besides. Well, Josiah was fit to be tied. He said that, mark his words, algebra someday would be the ruination of business. But he give Grandpa back the skin and the $5 besides, and Grandpa went home happy. Liz wasn't so happy, though. She said if that was what algebra was like, 'twas no better than bingo. And she made Grandpa give the $5 to the church organ fund. But she let him keep the swivel skin, and that's what he made the pair of slippers out of that he wears to this very day. He calls them his algebra slippers, and he says that whatever algebra is, there's no doubt about it, 'tis a true friend to the poor man.